Welcome to a ride on the outside. MMA is full of people on the inside, but what about the ones that watch from beyond? Welcome to the MMA Outsiders with Tom Albano and Zain Bando on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network.
Well, this was meant to be one kind of episode for the MMA Outsiders, and the last 48 hours have proven to be just everything that could go wrong when planning an episode.
For sure, because of course it happens as it has happened several times in the history of this show. And we move on and we follow the news cycle as such. For those of you guys who don't know, welcome back to the MMA Outsiders. It is another episode. I'm Zain, that's Tom. It's great to have you guys all back. It's the beginning of June, and there's a ton of combat sports madness to talk about. And as you just alluded to a minute ago, we had one show kind of in the plans, and then our plans just got totally bamboozled because of a major topic involving a major Irish superstar that we will spend, I'd say, a pretty good majority of the show talking about. So stay tuned for all of that and so much more.
And to think, we still have UFC 302 to talk about, which did not impress me much. And I'm very sad because Dustin Poirier, although I kind of expected that heartbreak, we got a couple of big knockouts in the Matchroom Queensbury card, which ended up in a complete sweep. Oh, by the way, the Mike Tyson-Jake Paul fight also got rebooked, and that's towards the bottom of our list. Welcome to how crazy episode 86 of the MMA Outsiders is.
Yeah, welcome to the craziness that is episode 86. And before we get into it and so much more, be sure to like and subscribe. Be sure to follow the Empty the Bench Podcast Network across all social media platforms, including Facebook, X, Instagram, and so much more. At ETB Network, you can follow this very show at MMA Outsiders ETB. And before we get into it, so much more that is going to be episode 86. Tom, can you please remind our viewers and listeners or everyone and can find each of our works and just kind of what we do for the network and outside of the show?
Yeah, sure. So let me very quickly, let me make a big plug to also plug youtube.com/ETV Network, our YouTube home, where we just hit 750 subscribers. You keep that climb going towards the 1,000 mark. And of course, listen to the MMA Outsiders wherever you get your podcasts on those audio-only platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Acast, iHeart, so much more. And also, if you are going to take, I realized something in the recording that we did previously, San. Technically, if you have YouTube Premium, you can take the MMA Outsiders on the road with you with YouTube as well. So you can get the 2-for-1.
Yes, you sure can. You get the 2-for-1. And for those of you who are listening on the audio-only platforms, be sure to come back to our main YouTube flagship home. And for those of you who are doing the inverse of that, do so as such as well. Pretty much what we're saying is, in so many words, that there are multiple ways to consume our content, whether it is that you want to see our ugly mugs or that you don't. Every single option imaginable to you is available for you. So with all that being said and so much more, we'll try to introduce.
Let me get back. Yeah, hold on. Let me get back to what I was talking about because you wanted me to.
Sure.
Okay, I'm Tom Bando, contributor for MMA News and Fan-Centered MMA, as well as with the PFL. So I'm going to have a very busy June where we've got the second half of the regular season. Plus, we've got coming up this Saturday, I believe the PFL is going to be in Newcastle for the second PFL Europe card of the year.
That's true, and Savannah Marshall is headlining that. Should be interesting.
That is true. Should be fun. Follow me on social media at Thomas J. Albano. To my right, as always, Zain Bando, staff writer for VJPen.com, MMA Knockouts. And now doing also work for TSN, the Sporting News. Find his work, follow him at Zambando99. Don't forget to go to etvpodcast.com, which Zan runs the blogging department over there. And they're just cranking out blog after blog, banger after banger.
It's true. And speaking of social media, I know you just mentioned it. I just hit another milestone. Speaking of X, 4,700 X followers. So thank you to every single person that follows my content each and every day. I could not do it without any of you. So again, and thank you so much for another milestone. 4.7K and the road to 5K continues. Let's go.
Meanwhile, I'm just celebrating the fact that I got to 400 X followers.
Hey, we all got to start somewhere, right?
Yes. And speaking, we also would be very remiss if we did not talk about Playback, the Up to the Bench podcast network, and whether it be the MMA Outsiders or anything else here on the Up to the Bench podcast network is presented by our good friends over at Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together, with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. This Thursday night, Game 1 of the NBA Finals between the Mavericks and the Celtics. We'll be there for that. I'll be there for that, along with my ETB Sports co-host, Nick Morgeson. It should be fun, and we are looking to broadcast every single one of the NBA Finals games, so this should be a fun road to the end of the NBA season.
Oh, no doubt. And for those of you who are looking for me specifically on those streams, you should be expecting me from Game 3 through the remainder of the series, no matter how long it lasts. So I won't be going for too long, but I'm hoping that Tom and the rest of the crew can hold down the fort for Games 1 and 2 until I come back. So I'm very much looking forward to being a part of it, as well as our producer Pat behind the scenes will probably be on deck for some of those games and so much more, even though his Timberwolves are sadly out of the tournament, if you will. So
fair enough. All right, let's just get into it. Let's stop wasting time. So Sunday midnight comes. It's 12 hours before the big press conference in Dublin is supposed to start, and a tweet goes out on the UFC social media account that Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler's press conference in Dublin, Ireland is postponed until further notice. And that starts a whole chain of mayhem trying to figure out answers. And just for full context, it is 9:21 p.m. Eastern Time on Monday night, June 3rd, when we're recording this. And as of this time, we still don't have an answer, an official reason as to why. Conor has put out a statement that says circumstances beyond our control, but that could mean anything. And at this point, we're still trying to figure out what's going on. Chandler put up a tweet, looked like he was quoting somebody, and his typical "see you at the top," showing training camp footage with the hashtag UFC 303. So it looks like he still wants to go. It's been all the matter of, is this fight going to happen still? Is it not going to happen? There were a lot of signs pointing in the direction that it's not going to happen. However, Ariel Helwani then goes on the MMA Hour and basically implies that the fault lies not in the Conor camp. There was all this also talk about, did Chandler or Dana White go over to Dublin? Chandler was supposedly told on Sunday night that the conference wasn't happening while he was on his way to an airport, so he's still in the States. He's in Florida right now, last we checked, training. Dana supposedly had gone over to Dublin right after the post-fight press conference for UFC 302. Last I checked, I think it was
because that's what he said he was going to do, right? That was his plan. Yeah.
Correct. And according to one of our buddies in the MMA media group chat, 4 Ounce to Freedom, Dana and ESPN are still over in Dublin.
Okay. So, if that's a sign, my guess is what the current report is that the fight is still on and that the fight is still gonna. This is just my personal prediction. I think given that nugget from our buddy who's been very plugged in on multiple different announcements over the past few months that eventually have been confirmed, I personally think that the fight is still going to happen, but we're probably not going to go ahead and reschedule this press conference just because there isn't enough time with over 3 weeks to go. That's my pick. I'm going to go with the safer. I wouldn't say that the fight is still going to happen for the sanity of everybody, but at this point, I would not be surprised with anything. So,
and the thing is, and Ariel pointed this out on his show, if you look at Conor's tweet, his statement where he says he's looking forward to getting in there, putting on one of the greatest all-time shows, he never says anything about June 29th. Should that be something of a concern, or is that something of a reach? Because Ariel said he doesn't want to read too much into that, but he does find that very interesting.
I think people are reading too much into that. He may have just forgotten to include it. There could be multiple reasons.
Now, we've also heard of potential reasons could be that Conor canceled. Now, Conor has canceled all media obligations, so it could be something. And see, the thing is, I hear the Conor injury rumors that are very prevalent as of the time we're recording this, but Ariel has already said that the fault does not lie within the Conor camp.
Yeah, which is definitely very interesting, just considering Conor McGregor's past history with everything that he does outside of the cage, and given the videos that are being put out of him. Now, people have failed to verify whether or not those videos at those clubs were taken this year in 2024, if they are videos of the past that are resurfacing. Nonetheless, Conor McGregor likes to have a good time.
It's funny. Well, Dana did talk about that at the press conference, said he wasn't sure, what was real, what was fake. And that actually caused some speculation of, did he land in Dublin and not like something that he saw? But Ariel has already said there's no drug or alcohol violation.
Yeah, I mean, what I was just going to say was, before you jumped in, and it's not a huge deal. All I was trying to say was, Conor McGregor likes to party a lot. Is it a surprise that those videos are coming out now? Probably not. But I think it wouldn't be. Let's just say this: it wouldn't be a Conor McGregor. It wouldn't be a Conor McGregor 2-month-long buildup without madness like this. And I'm just going to put it simply: this is all part of this is all part of the circus, my friend.
It really is. Hold on. Did you say circus? There's only one time for me to ever do anything with circus. That's when I play this music and I say, Conor country, let's ride.
It's literally true. So I guess with that being said, if you were to put odds on this, will Conor McGregor step into the octagon and against Michael Chandler on June 29th? My unofficial fake odds are currently set that yes, minus 350 with the coming in at plus 125 or whatever the other side of the odds would be for no. What are you taking?
Zain, you know what I'm thinking? I'm not placing a bet on this crap. Not placing a bet on it. Is too risky. At this point, look, I want to say yes because I want this circus over and done with. At the same time, I'm getting to the point again where it's like, I'll believe this fight happens when Conor McGregor steps a pinky toe into that octagon.
That's fair. You've been saying that for over a year and a half, and I guess we can continue to say it now that this press conference is no longer happening.
I just feel very bad.
Being postponed for the time being is what I meant to rephrase that as. But continue.
I just feel really bad for those who are in Dublin, who made flights, made travel arrangements. We're really looking forward for this press conference and looking to have Conor McGregor be himself at the press conference, and now they're not going to get that.
Yeah, they're not going to get that, unfortunately, and there's just still so many unknowns. And it's on what I find more ironic, and this is kind of goofy, we didn't include this in our rundown, but this is on the heels, days before the premiere of the new Roku series, Fight Incorporated, the new 3-part series that takes you behind the scenes of the UFC, literally, and they have their biggest star behind the scenes, maybe causing a scuffle that this fight may not even occur. It's crazy how the irony works out in that particular instance.
Yeah, seriously, it's crazy how all this is playing out. This is just craziness in general, and trying to putting all these, pieces together, trying to paint everything like one big conspiracy theory. I mean, there are people saying Ariel probably knows something, but he doesn't want to risk his relationship
My
with Conor.
my guess is that Ariel probably does, given his nature. He probably knows exactly how UFC 303 is going to play out. He's just not willing to announce anything because he he doesn't even though he already kind of has a bit of a strained relationship with the UFC.
Well, in this case, Zan, it wouldn't be with the UFC. It would be because he always gets Conor interviews. It would
No,
be
no,
with
no,
Conor.
no, right. But what I'm saying is, too, if the UFC is waiting to announce something, and Ariel jumps the gun on that, again, the UFC could have a response to that again, and it could not end up being good for him again. That was more so on my point. But yeah, he is one of the few members of the MMA media that consistently gets Conor McGregor interviews. I've seen everything from a minor injury, which has been debunked by several sources, and I've also seen people have been speculating that it might be because of political unrest in Ireland. The fact of the matter is, no one knows the real answer as to why the press conference was postponed. We may never know.
We may never know, but like I said, for the fans who were supposed to be there in Ireland, especially those who made travel arrangements, I think an explanation is eventually it's owed.
Oh, it's owed for the ticket goers for sure. But I guess to kind of defend the ticket goers a little bit, at least they didn't have to spend any money on tickets because tickets to that press conference were free.
That's true as well.
All people needed to do was just figure out a way to get there. So
That is
it definitely is very unfortunate. But on the bright side, and I know this sounds weird, the time that we're recording this, the date is June 3rd. This is coming out on Tuesday, June 4th, 2024. If this was June 14th, 2024, or June 15th, 2024, or what when June 20th, 2024, 9 days out from the fight, I would be more worried than I am now, where we still have 25 days till the fight.
I mean, there should still be some worry given that it is the month of the fight, but now, Zan, I think it's also time to talk about the other half of the rumor, which is actually part of the rumor that I didn't really get into in my breaking news reaction video that went out on our socials when this first transpired, early morning hours of Monday, is that there is supposedly, if you remember Dana White's comments at the post-fight press conference, he says conveniently, "Oh, I'm working on a BMF fight," and we said, "Now wait a minute, Max Holloway was supposedly next in line for Ilia Topuria and the featherweight championship, and now that's got everybody speculating. If McGregor or Chandler pulls out of this fight for whatever reason, this fight does not play out, especially in the McGregor sense. Is Max Holloway going to be a backup for this fight?"
If he can turn around, I think they should do it. What do you think?
I mean, look what if that's true, look what your options are. Either Max Holloway fills in and you get Holloway versus Chandler at 170, which Holloway at 170 scares me given how small he seemed to be when he fought Dustin the first time at 155, especially now this would be a short notice fight. And the circumstances of what happened, Holloway was a short notice fill-in last time. UFC in Brooklyn.
And look at what happened there. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got that, or you get McGregor. If it's Chandler who pulls out, you get McGregor Holloway rematch, 11 years in the making. So your options are one of those two, or you put an interim title tag on Jamal Hill versus Carlos Ulberg,
which is the worst last resort in all capital letters, bolded, underlined scenario that the UFC probably does not want to do, given roughly the millions of dollars they've already spent in the marketing department and to even promote UFC 303, IFW, and what have you.
Well, I also saw a thing that said the only way that McGregor versus Chandler doesn't happen and it falls out, the only logical replacement is MSG gets screwed. If they can get John Jones and Stipe, they pay them extra, quickly fill in on short notice, do a heavyweight title fight.
Could you see that happen? I don't know if it can turn.
Is Jones how's Jones in his training with the recovery from the torn back? Is he ready?
Doesn't seem like it's a concern based on what he's been saying to the fans on
So,
social media.
but then, if
know.
if that is the case, do you put in the contract for that fight if it were to fill in at 303 and the Aspinall Blades fight for 304? Do you put in the contracts then winners must fight at MSG 309 in November?
Oh, that's the only stipulation you put in, and you make them sign it or you don't. That's what I think. Yeah, that has to be it. That's the only
Because
restriction, quote unquote, that you put on the fighters involved, which in this case would be Jones and Stipe and Aspinall and Blades. That the winners have to fight it at Madison Square Garden on November 16th. Yeah.
So a lot going on, a lot, and as of the time we're recording,
that's an outlier out of left field, the Jones Stipe thing that I did not initially think about. I just don't think it's good for a 3.5 week turnaround. That's not going to be good. I don't think they have to go internally with what they know, and because Holloway's fresh off of 300, to me he's the only logical backup fighter because they're not going to make O'Malley fight again, and because he just fought at UFC 299 and they're trying to prep him for the Sphere in September. So
like we talked about a couple of weeks ago, either the Sphere in September, or to be the co-main of that Madison Square Garden card, or
the co-main
given the circuit, or the main, depending on what happens with this craziness, maybe even the main of MSG or the December Vegas card.
You never know. There's a lot of scenarios in play, but given all of the scenarios we just mentioned, if you were to make a prediction right now on June 4th, on the day this is coming out, who do you think headlines UFC 303, and is it going to be any surprise to anyone? Are we overthinking this?
Sam, it has to be McGregor Chandler. I'm not saying it has to be given those other options, but just the madness that we have been driven to over the last year plus with this. If it's not McGregor versus Chandler, you're going to see frustration up the wazoo in the MMA community.
I think so too, and you may see some people that have followed MMA for a long time decide to refuse to follow the sport because of this potential BS. And I'm
gonna go out on a limb and say this. I've already talked about with the potential of McGregor losing, but if Conor McGregor, for whatever reason, does not fight on June 29th, it's time to just go away for good.
I agree with that.
At this point, at that point, I mean, sunrise, sunset. The sun will come out tomorrow. Give Chandler a title eliminator to make up for all the time he's wasted.
I would agree with that. So I guess to kind of wrap up this portion of it, when do you think we're going to get a announcement or a little bit of clarity on what happens with this fight? And
we have to have it at some point this week.
That's what you think?
We have to have something this week that gives MMA fans some breathing room.
Fair enough.
All right. Speaking of breathing room, let's take a breath off of this. We still have a card we got to talk about. UFC 302 this past weekend in Newark, New Jersey. Producer Pat was there. He got to experience what is likely the final career fight for Dustin Poirier. And, as somebody who supported Dustin for a long time, I expected this, but it still broke my heart as Islam Makhachev retains the championship, the UFC Lightweight Championship, with a 5th round submission. Fight itself, I mean, look, Poirier had his moments. He had some good takedown defense in the 2nd round, the elbow and the body shots in the 4th round, but overall, it was Makhachev controlling the fight, and then in the 5th round, he just put it away with the Darce choke that got the tap out, and Poirier kind of passed out right after he tapped out. So, look, Islam Makhachev just proving again why he is the man at 155 pounds. And it breaks my heart that Dustin Poirier will now have to go alongside the likes of, Chael Sonnen, Donald Cowboy Cerrone, Stephan Bonner, as some of the greats of the UFC, past and present, who never end up becoming an undisputed world champion. But at the same time, it's not like he didn't have a fantastic career.
Right. It's not like, and we can't discount the either than he did win an interim lightweight championship against the very game Max Holloway when he did do it. He pretty much did everything you could ever want in this sport except to win an undisputed title, which is very difficult to do across a 15-year span. And to do it, in your mid 30s and still fighting like a stud is pretty impressive. And 35 is an ugly year. We talk about the 35 curse. We talk about 35-year-olds, being winless in title fights and stuff like that. Unfortunately, Dustin Poirier is the epitome of that, and it sucks to say that considering the resume he has and stuff. But sometimes fate would happen, and you run into the better fighters. And I mean, think about it. His 3 title fights, he lost to 3 of the top 10 lightweight fighters, not just right now, but 3 of the top 10 lightweight fighters potentially of all time. That's something that you can hang your hat on, knowing that you fought in there against the best and you gave the best effort that you possibly could, and that's all you could ask for. It was just devastating though a bit in round 4 when Poirier started to put his punches together, and you thought that Dustin Poirier was going to do the thing where he started swarming Islam, and you were just waiting for the moment, and
you get those, Zain, you get those like flashbacks to 2020 when he fought Dan Hooker and he was down 0-2 and storms back to win the decision.
Yeah, you thought that moment was going to come, and it just never happened. It was super unfortunate. But this tells me, regardless of what Dana White says at this current moment in time, that Islam Makhachev.
I was going to ask you about that.
So okay, let me just explain, because there's 2 sides of the argument. John Jones to me is the greatest MMA fighter of all time. We're talking about it holistically, but when we're talking about it right now, at the present June of 2024, the pound for pound best fighter in the world, there's only one answer to that fateful question, and it is currently the undisputed lightweight champion of the world. Islam Makhachev has fought 8 times since 2021. Very few fighters can say that they fought 8 times since 2021 and done so incredibly impressively. And just as this reminder, that it's only compared to John Jones' 1 win, and according to Dana, Cyril Gane was the best heavyweight in the division. Last I checked, the best heavyweight in the division is not even in the UFC. So what does that mean?
Oh, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. My sound effect thing was on mute. Let me play that again. Let me try that again. Cyril Gane was the best heavyweight in the world. It's once again, it's the anti-Francis bias that Dana White has put out ever since Francis and the UFC had that ugly fallout.
It's true. It's very true. And by the way, unfortunately, for the reason why you didn't get a laugh out of me is because I could not hear your sound effect at all. Unfortunately.
Really?
No, I can hear it.
Oh no, this isn't good. I'll have to figure out what's going on there. But anyways, look, I mean, I understand what Dana was saying about when you talk about activity, how Jones, looked great, just 3 years later. I
get it too. But the issue that I had with his argument is he's mixing, a decade plus run of longevity with the guy who's currently active right now and is currently beating former champions and top contenders now. That's the part that's the part that I think is confusing a lot of people.
Well, one, like you said, Cyril Gane was not the best heavyweight in the world. Maybe in the UFC, but we all know the truth on that one. And number 2, I mean, George St. Pierre had a 4-year layoff, and he ended up winning Bisping for the middleweight championship. I wouldn't have put him pound for pound number 1 in 2017.
No, but to do what he did is an incredible feat. So I don't know. I just feel like
now I will give Dana. Hold on, Zain, because I will give Dana one thing, that there is an argument against Islam in this, and that's when we're talking about pound for pound, and there are several people in the pound for pound who have competed and done and had success at multiple weight classes. When you look at Islam's title defenses, it's here against Dustin, and his only other two title defenses were against Volkanovski when he was the featherweight champion. Now, one was an instant classic, but the other was a 10-day short notice fight that ended with Makhachev getting a first-round knockout. And that's why, listen, I get why Islam is saying he wants to go up to 170 to fight Leon. But Islam and Leon have not cleared their divisions. Islam and Leon need more work. Islam cannot do that off of 2 fights with Volkanovski and a potentially retiring Dustin Poirier when you've still got Justin Gaethje at the weight class, when you still have a whole bunch of names at 155 who are still itching for a shot. Charles Oliveira is itching for a rematch.
Right.
And keep in mind, I think Arman Tsarukyan, based on his win in the title eliminator UFC 300, he's owed a title shot. And if I'm somebody in the Middle East and I hear Islam Makhachev taking on Arman Tsarukyan as a potential main event for Abu Dhabi, I'd be in for that.
Yeah, and that's something that Dane even alluded to after the fight, saying that that's the only fight that makes sense at this point for Makhachev. So let's hope that they make the fight. Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're Leon, you had the trilogy with it was 2 fights, but overall trilogy with Kamaru, and then he had Colby Covington, and that was a worthless fight. And he's got Bilal Muhammad coming up in July. And don't forget, depending on what happens on the 22nd, because he's fighting at middleweight when he takes on Robert Whittaker. But you still have Khamzat Chimaev potentially waiting in the wings, too, for a title shot at 170.
You do, and this is Khamzat's first true test. If you were thinking about it, this is his first true former champion, similar styles. People are saying that Khamzat really hasn't fought anybody. We're going to find out if Khamzat is the real deal when he fights the former champion in Whittaker in a few weeks, because that is a fantastic fight. Absolutely.
It is. So we still have some things that need to be playing out before Islam. Like, I get it based on what Dana's argument, what Islam is trying to do with going up to 170, but he and Leon still have some work to do at their respective weight classes before we make that fight, as good as it sounds.
Absolutely. So I think what makes the most sense moving forward is Makhachev versus Tarzukian is the main event for Abu Dhabi. And then if this isn't Dustin Poirier's final fight, I think the fight that makes sense for him, if he chooses to come back, in my opinion, this is just me. I think, and I know we were just talking about this, but I hate to say it, you do one of 2 options. It's either Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor, for which you would need prayers for that, or you do Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje again as a final farewell fight. In my opinion, if that's really the best fight, you let those 2 go on their shield and give people an all-time classic. That's what I think.
I like those options. Did you see Alex Volkanovski's video?
I did, yeah.
I mean, the matchup itself sounds interesting. I don't know if that's enough to convince Dustin to come out of retirement, 1, and 2.
I don't think the UFC will make that fight because of the weight discrepancy. I really don't.
Yeah, and look, like I said weeks ago, I don't want to see Volkanovski fight for the rest of this year. I honestly don't. After the knockouts,
I agree. But
I think.
Go ahead.
I think Volk, it's better off just waiting for 2025. And plus, I get what he's saying, keep busy, while he waits for the featherweight title shot. But if he takes a fight with Dustin at 155 and he loses and he goes 0-3 at lightweight, I think that can still impact what happens at featherweight, regardless of what happens, with the rest of the weight class, and regardless of what happens with Max Holloway.
I do too, because that's how this crazy sport works sometimes, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. So, yeah, I mean, there was definitely a lot to unpack there, but there was even more to unpack in the co-main event, which was another 5-round affair. We had Sean Strickland getting back in the win column after the loss to Dricus du Plessis, losing his middleweight title in the process, and beating Paulo Costa by a very shocking, and technically they just be in all caps, a baffling and literally baffling split decision, not a unanimous decision. And this one is one of the and you know this. I've watched MMA now, let's see, for almost 18 years. It'll be 18 years in July. One of the weirdest inverses of 2 scorecards I've ever seen, and one that just makes you go, I mean, one that just makes you say, does the unified rules of MMA even matter anymore, because if that decision told us anything, it's very clear to me that they simply don't, and it's almost a disgrace.
I'll tell you what happened. I'll tell you what happened. First of all, this fight was super disappointing.
It
Sean
really
Strickland
was.
even said it. Sean Strickland even said it himself in the post-fight interview. I mean, I had questions about this fight being 5 rounds, and that kind of really was played out. And I mean, look, it was disappointing because Paulo Costa, Zan, I've talked about why I'm not a fan of Paulo Costa. Here it is again, that he just sometimes does not live up to what he should. And we did not expect that Paulo Costa would fight this fight on the back foot. And, you would think that Paulo Costa would be the kind of guy who meets Sean Strickland and his pressure head on, but he didn't. And as far as the scorecard in his favor, 4 rounds to 1, all I can say is
on crack.
Now that worked. I could hear that one.
Okay, you got it. All right, you heard that one.
Yep.
Okay, good. So yeah, this was not good. This was not a good fight. I mean, it was a good performance for Sean Strickland. Now he says, "Okay, I paid my due. Now I'm gonna wait." Are you for him waiting on the sideline?
Of course, he's the former middleweight champion. He won his number 1 contender eliminator fight. What else do you want? What else do you want him to do? He won his semifinal to get to the finals. Now we have this other semifinal eliminator between Robert Whittaker and Hamza Chimaev. So these 2 of those guys are going to cancel each other out. So with that being said, there's options for Strickland, but given that he's the former middleweight champion and given that he's the personality that he is, of course he waits. Absolutely. He's going to get, hang on a second, he's going to get either one of 2 huge money rematches. Dricus Duplessis or Israel Adesanya, assuming they fight in August in Perth. So either way, it's a win-win. It's a win-win for Strickland.
Okay, devil's advocate though. Let's say that Dricus Adesanya fight happens and Adesanya gets the belt back. You going to go with Adesanya Strickland first, or are you going to go with Dricus Duplessis? And because of the potential hype around a rematch between DDP and Adesanya.
No, you'd have to go with Strickland first, based on the letter of the rankings, in my opinion.
Okay. Quickly trying to move on with the rest of the 302 card. Kevin Holland. I mean, he got dropped by Michael, first of all, but then he ends up doing. I mean, look. People can kind of discredit Kevin Holland's grappling when he's in there against some real grapplers. I should clarify, not real grapplers, but the expert level kind of grapplers that we've always seen time and time again with their performances. He can break. But here, he just, he threw up his legs, he threw up his guard, and he delivered. And he ends up breaking Michael Olesicic's arm, gets the first round submission. Freaking Herb Dean. I mean, Herb Dean, guys, was the person who stopped the Frank Mir. Was it Frank Mir, Tim Sylvia?
Yeah, Frank Mir, Tim Sylvia, the first fight. Yep.
And then with the broken arm, because I remember him. Oh, stop! Like, bleep, stop! And he noticed the arm injury before anybody else. Here, you could see the dislocation, if not the break, in Michael's arm. Yeah, and Herb didn't step in for 10 seconds. Now, did he not tap? Yes. But even Big John McCarthy talked about it on his show. I mean, not on his show, on social media. As a referee in MMA, part of your responsibility is the health and safety of the fighters. If you see an arm break or an arm dislocation, it is your responsibility to step in and stop it.
Yeah, it's not only your responsibility, it's your downright duty as a referee to make sure that the fighter's safety is accounted for. And Owen Jacek, it's not only Owen Jacek, but his arm was anything but accounted for. And although it was an impressive performance by Holland, it goes to show that referees need to be more on the ball. And in this case, a veteran referee like him, a referee that's been around 20 years, was not present. And for Kevin Holland to say that, this fight's probably over, it should not be the responsibility of the fighter to do that. It should be the referee to tell the fighter to stop. And when you have a fighter telling the referee that I probably should stop, that's a sign of concern, 100%.
For sure. I mean, impressive win for Holland. He kind of needed it after going into this fight off back-to-back losses.
And he had lost 4 out of his last 6 fights dating back to 2022. So
yeah. So kind of needed a win, and hopefully he gets something good in his next fight. Nico Price, Alex Morono. The one fight that I got wrong kept me from a perfect scorecard. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm impersonating how I felt watching Nico Price versus Alex Morono.
Yeah, it was a news fest for sure.
This sucked.
Probably the worst fight on the card, the one fight that probably messed up everybody's parlay bets, and the one fight that will probably only be watched once by me and never watched again, and as you paid me a lot of money to do so. This fight was downright horrible, and it was the definition of what stale popcorn tastes like in real life, because that's how horrible this fight was. And this fight was just forgettable. It was good to see Nico Price get back in the win column. He struggled as of late. His chin has not always been there. But Alex Morono, after being such a big favorite, it was a really disappointing letdown. And I really don't know what the UFC does with him from here, because I saw some speculation online that this was such a poor performance that there could be the argument that Morono should be cut by the promotion. I'm not going to go that far and say that, but I'm going to say that Alex Morono, if he did have a lot of fans, he lost many of them given that his performance went the way it went. And for Price, someone who just needed to win, he did what he needed to do, but definitely not in the most Nico Price-esque performance that we're used to seeing. The wild, flashy strikes just weren't there, and it was not the fight that people were expecting. And it was a downright, really, really sad disappointment. And it'll be interesting to see where both guys go from here, but definitely not the way that you wanted to begin the main card, or at least early on the main card, on the wrong foot. So definitely a disappointing outing for both guys.
Yeah, for sure. Randy Brown taking on Elizio Zaleski dos Santos. Randy Brown ends up getting the decision win. Decent striking fest. I give it that one. And Brown's boxing. I think Brown's boxing sometimes gets underrated.
Yeah, it definitely gets underrated for sure. And it's something that, I think a lot of people, who aren't religious watchers of Dana White looking for a fight probably even knew who Randy Brown was. So for him to fight on a big stage and beat a guy who was a very highly touted prospect again, a good win for Randy Brown. He's not one of these high profile top contenders, but he's definitely someone that can work his way up, and maybe by 2025, 2026, he'll be in some bigger fights. But this was definitely a good win and a good feather in his cap to get a name out of the way that a lot of people were hyping up as potentially a next potentially big prospect, and Randy Brown shut that down and more, even though there was controversy in a mix of boos and cheers at the Prudential Center, because I think there was a side of the arena that thought that maybe Dos Santos was one, but I think the majority of the crowd is with the judges got this one right. Again, a very, very good fight, but one of those fights where you're probably going to forget about it until Randy Brown fights somebody notable, and that's just the way that it works. So,
I want to mention this fight just because this was supposed to be on the main card, and for whatever reason, they decided on Thursday night, we're going to put Nico Price versus Alex Morono in, and see how that played out. Jailton Almeida gets one of the only finishes of the night, quickly putting out Alexander Romanov, and
one of three finishes to be exact.
And Almeida, this was a great performance, a great rebound after getting knocked out by Curtis Blades at 299. And if you're Almeida, he's still now within the mix of the heavyweight contenders.
He certainly is, and he's someone that you don't want to take lightly, especially if they end up headlining him in Brazil at some point. He's definitely a draw there, and he's a heavyweight that could be a gatekeeper that could spoil a lot of plans. And given that, Aspinall is going to be fighting Blades, and more than likely Jones is going to be fighting Stipe Miocic, knock on wood, he's probably one of those guys. I did just hear you, knock on wood, that's good, because we're 6 or 7 months away, however long we are from that. But yeah, he's definitely one of these guys, that could sneak up in the background and spoil some plans at the heavyweight division, divisional dominoes, if you will, drop a certain way. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here. And I think for his sake, he just needs to play the waiting game and see what happens. That's what I think.
For sure. And then Dave Torelli. I mean, I kind of said it before. but I'll say it again.
Who was on crack?
I know Dana basically ripped this guy a new one when he was talking about the Paulo Costa scorecard. But just, I mean, between this and the way that he scored the Mitch Raposo fight in favor of Raposo, which caused DC and Joe Rogan to basically go on rants and Joe Rogan to basically advocate on UFC television for open scoring. You screwed up. And I think I had my best tweet of the night when I was talking about Dave Torelli. And look, I don't think sending him to the minor leagues is going to be good enough. I think he's got to go back to whatever judging school he came from and relearn this sport.
I think so too.
All right, that's going to put UFC 302 to bed. I hate to say, I will give everybody, including you, Zain, and producer Pat, credit in that the main event saved the show. The main event absolutely saved the show. However, that being said, between all the bad judging, the bad refereeing displays, because we didn't even talk about the one fight. It was Randy Brown. There was an eye poke, and the referee didn't even call for time. He didn't even give him the full 5 minutes. Just, okay, let's go. Between the constant, look, I get it. In the New York, New Jersey metro area and the Texas area, we always seem to get really bad things happening with judges and referees.
And Canada too.
And Canada. But with all the constant bad stuff with the refereeings and the judges, the boring fights, the constant decisions, look, I will say that Dustin Poirier versus Islam Makhachev saves the show from going into the toilet, but I'm only going to give this card a C or C minus. This was not a good show. I'm
going to be more generous and say a B minus, just considering that Dustin Poirier went on his shield. But if the main event was boring, it would be with you in the C range. But I'm going to be a little bit more generous, given that the main event had the stakes that it did, and it had the ending that it did, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, going back to what we talked about with McGregor and Chandler, for UFC's sake, UFC 303, after what we've seen, I mean, 301 was okay, and then 302 was just a bore in my mind. And 303 better, with it being International Fight Week, it better deliver.
I think so too.
All right, let's talk about Matchroom Queensbury for a little bit. Let's talk about the 3 big fights from that one. We're not going to go through all of the fights. Let's just focus on the big 3. Zhilei Zhang stopping Deontay Wilder, needing just 5 rounds to do it. And Wilder used his power early, and he rocked Zhang early, but he gassed out, and Zhang was able to take advantage and knocked him out pretty violently. Good on Zhang. He continues to surge up very late in his career. And as far as Wilder goes, in the words of one very famous bald-headed UFC CEO, I'd like to see him retire.
Yeah, I would like to see Wilder retire too. The fights with Fury, this fight, some of his other lackluster performances over the last few years, he just isn't the same guy. And to see him get knocked out like that, he would have never been knocked out like that 5 or 6 years ago. But as that same bald guy likes to say, Father Time catches us all, and this was the one where Father Time caught up to Deontay Wilder, and he lost to simply a better fighter. That's all it was. A better fighter, I guess, in this era. If this was 5 or 6 years ago, I think Wilder would have won this fight going away. I think it would have been super easy. But given where he is in his career now, this just wasn't the right matchup for him, and it just didn't. It didn't go according to plan, and it went, I think, a little bit longer than how it should have gone, and it just was really disappointing. So,
for sure. And I guess the only way that we're going to get Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder, maybe if you played in the Undisputed video game that comes out in October.
That's true.
The other big headline from this, Daniel Dubois shocking the world. I feel bad for Filip Hrgović for all that he had to wait, but the IBF had elected, okay, it's going to be an interim heavyweight title fight, and the mandatory position will be on the line. And if Hrgović wins, and they decide to either strip Usyk or they vacate it, depending on what happens with his extension, then the winner of this fight would be the IBF champion. So all Hrgović had to do was win this fight, and Daniel Dubois stops him with a doctor stoppage. And now to the victor goes all the spoils. Daniel Dubois is the interim IBF heavyweight champion. Daniel Dubois is now the mandatory challenger. And if Usyk gets stripped or vacates, Daniel Dubois becomes the IBF heavyweight champion.
Yeah, boxing couldn't get any crazier to unpack, but I think he'll be watching with bated breath to see who wins between Usyk and Fury, and he'll go from there. But you know, a couple years ago, it looked like heavyweight boxing was on its deathbed, and now we're talking about scenarios about stripping a belt and mandatory challengers. It's a good time for heavyweight boxing. It's a good time to be a boxing connoisseur, and this is just another layer on the multiple layers of the cake, if you will. That it just feels like it's never it's never ending. Here, you want a serving? You can have one.
Yeah, there's plenty of pie to go around in the heavyweight boxing scene now. It's kind of good to see. And once again, Zain, you know, it's one of those things that sometimes you cringe to say it, but we talked about boxing never making the big fights. Ever since His Excellency in Saudi Arabia's gone in there, they've made the fights happen.
Oh yeah, and it's even going to get bigger on December 21st when Fury and Usyk step in there again. And assuming that nothing catastrophic happens with that fight, I think heavyweight boxing is in very good hands at this point.
And supposedly Anthony Joshua is in talks for September 21st in Wembley.
I'd like to see that.
The
big question is going to be who is it going to be against? That's the big question.
I actually want to double check that because I saw that they were talking about September 21st, Wembley. Oh, it's Daniel Dubois. So there's a chance if the IBF steps in and does their thing, you know, we'll have the IBF title on the line in September between AJ and Dubois, and the other championships on the line between Usyk and Fury in December. We could end up getting back to the undisputed heavyweight title scene eventually.
Yeah, almost like a mini 4-man tournament. It's pretty cool. And it would be great for boxing because for two reasons. Number one, it's my birthday weekend, the weekend of September 21st. That's the most important thing we wanted to get out of the way for a second. And number two, there would be no UFC event whatsoever, a fight night nor a pay-per-view competing against it, which would be perfect.
Also, Joshua, the world would be Joshua and Dubois' oyster then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then maybe Usyk and Fury, but we'll see. You never know. You never know if Dana will decide, you know what, a UFC pay-per-view right before Christmas, just because F you.
Which could be possible, but given the state of the ESPN Plus contract and the way it's structured, that probably won't happen. So
fair enough. One other thing to mention from Matchroom versus Queensbury, other than Matchroom getting completely swept, Dimitri Bivol returned to the ring, retained the WBA light heavyweight title, quick finish of Malik Zanad, and they announced that the undisputed title fight with Artur Betriev is going to get rebooked. It'll be Saturday, October 12th. Unfortunately for you, Zain, you probably will be busy with Bellator that night in Chicago.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to see this fight, at least as it happens. And it actually, we did make a small error. We apologize to the error junkies on this show that have followed the show for 2 years. It's not Betriev, it's Beterbiev who he's fighting October 12th. So just to clear that up, if anybody was confused that there's maybe a new fighter in the mix, there isn't. It's our fault.
I know
in that regard. But nonetheless, I'm very glad that this fight's getting rebooked. It was supposed to happen June 1st, the same night as Poirier versus Makhachev. We're no longer getting it. These two guys were 100% healthy. This fight has to happen. It's another banger. And just like Beterbiev alluded to, or no, just like Joe Rogan alluded to a couple of weeks ago on his JRE podcast, Beterbiev is the scariest light heavyweight in the world. And it'll be very interesting to see how this fight plays out because I expect a stand-up slugfest with somebody going to sleep very, very quickly. That's what I think.
I agree. And Zain, speaking of being rebooked for October, well, this fight might end up getting rebooked for October. So obviously Tyson Paul was the biggest fight other than McGregor and Chandler that was being looked forward to in the summer.
Unfortunately,
July 20th on Netflix. What happened?
No, I'm saying, for those who are purists, it's unfortunate that would be considered one of the biggest fights of the summer.
Well, you know what? McGregor Chandler might not happen. This fight might not happen. Duplessis and Adesanya, the contracts aren't signed. So, yeah, I'm gonna to borrow the term hot girl summer. To borrow that we were gonna have a hot combat summer. That hot combat summer might fizzle out before summer even officially arrives.
Yeah, I would argue that the hot combat summer is not an extra hot. It could have easily dropped to medium in the last 48 hours, and it might still be on medium for a little while. You never know.
And if it gets any worse, we might get a cold summer.
Unfortunately, but yeah, there's not much I can really say here. I've said this countless times since the fight has been announced, and this is no disrespect to anybody over at Most Valuable Promotions. They've treated me well so far, but this fight doesn't need to happen. This fight shouldn't happen. This fight should get canceled for everybody's sanity. I don't think this fight should go ahead. I just think there's too many question marks. Mike Tyson is 30 years older. It's a fight that really nobody cares about other than the two names. Let's be honest. If this fight really does happen, you know who the rightful winner is going to be, and it's more than likely going to be Jake Paul because of his youthfulness, and so Jake Paul can brag to say that he fought Mike Tyson. This is all a money grab. I hope this doesn't happen. Tyson needs to worry about his health and safety first. And if I'm anybody in the Texas state regulatory board,
how did they let this fight, Zain? I'm sorry, but how did they let this fight be an actual professional legal bout and not an exhibition?
It's so dumb. It's so dumb. This is why we need a version of Andy Foster in every single commission, period. Because if Andy Foster was running Texas, this fight would have not happened.
Either this fight wouldn't have happened, or this would be an exhibition bout.
This would if the fight were to happen, it would more than likely be an exhibition, or it would have not happened at all.
All right, let's quickly try to wrap things up. We got UFC Louisville coming up this weekend. Main event, you got Jared Cannonier taking on Nasruddin Imavov. Look, I think I've talked about this already. I think we talked about it when we were talking about Strickland weeks ago. Imavov, I don't want to sound disrespectful to him. He's a talented fighter, but he is basically he's basically somebody you put your stars up against and your bigger fighters up against to get them a win. And I see Jared Cannonier just being the overall better fighter in this one and taking a decision win.
I think so too. This is Cannonier a clear decision win. And I know we don't really do locks on this show anymore, but this is my lock. I'm just going to say this. This is my unofficial lock for the month of June. Jared Cannonier by decision, UFC Louisville. Write it down, mark it down, timestamp it. It's going to happen.
He's already trying to use something from Football Friday here. He's trying to use a bench lock.
My unofficial UFC bench lock of the week, Jared Cannonier by decision over Nasruddin Imavov in a 4-1 beatdown. Now I'm going to be generous and give Imavov one round, but that's going to be it. I just think with the pedigree that Cannonier has fought versus Imavov, you can't compare it. Cannonier wins the fight going away, no questions asked. And unfortunately for the Louisville fans, they'll probably be asleep by about 10:40 Central Time because this fight will not live up to expectations. So for anyone going to UFC Louisville, you might want to consider getting some sort of a Fiend style soda because this fight may not live up to the billing by the time we get to 10 p.m. So
my advice is going to be if there's any sort of last minute 2-for-1 deal that you can do to go to both SmackDown the previous night and to UFC Louisville on Saturday night, do it.
Yeah, I would take that as well. But that's going to do it for another episode of the MMA.
Hold on. Yeah, we forgot one other thing here.
What did we forget? What do you mean? Oh, duh, we're going to promote it. We're going to promote it.
It's back, baby. The Ultimate Fighter returns tonight. The Ultimate Fighter Season 32. You got Alexa Grasso on one side. You got Valentina Shevchenko on the other. The most international season of The Ultimate Fighter ever. 14 countries represented. You got a stacked middleweight class with former champions across regional promotions in LFA, Cage Warriors, EFC Africa. This is going to be a really fun season, and hopefully it doesn't have the circus quality that last season had.
No, but that remains to be seen. But we're going to be with you guys 12 weeks, the whole season.
Oh, why do you say that? Oh, Tough Enough is back.
That's right. We are back for the unofficial season 2 of Tough Enough. Again, Team Grasso versus Team Shevchenko. We're going to take you guys on a roller coaster ride, 30-minute post shows every single week, all 12 episodes leading up to the finale. We have some fun prospects on this season. Men's featherweights and men's middleweights. It should be a blast. We'll see you guys there every single week. It'll air Tuesday nights immediately following every episode of The Ultimate Fighter. So for those of you who watch them, do not tune into the show because there will be spoilers from both of us. But nonetheless, for those of you who are diehard Ultimate Fighter fans, you have your fix for the second summer in a row. So there you go.
There you go. All right. So we will be with you tonight at 11:05 Eastern. And if you are watching this after, or watching or listening to this afterwards, go back and watch Tough Enough episode 1. It was really fun. It was really fun, most likely. And yeah, so we will be with you for all 12 weeks, all 12 episodes of Tough Enough. So yeah, let's just close things out here. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified of everything here at the Empty the Bench Network. Make sure to follow us across social media on Facebook, X, and Instagram at MMA Outsiders ETB. Do the same for the network at ETB Network, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok. YouTube.com/ETB Network. Hit the subscribe button. We're at 750 subscribers. We thank you all so much for your support. And don't forget to take the MMA Outsiders on the road with you wherever you get your audio-only podcasts. To my right, as always, Sam Bando, staff writer BJ Penn, MMA Knockouts, and the Sporting News. Anton Albano, contributor to MMA News, Fanside MMA, and with the PFL. Yes, I will be on the results call this Saturday for PFL in Newcastle, right before UFC Louisville. So I'm in for a very, very busy Saturday, but a very fun Saturday at the same rate.
Yes, absolutely. And I will be in for a very fun Saturday in my own right in your neck of the woods, which I'm very much looking forward to as well. Oh, so we'll both be busy in the same region doing two very, very different things with two very important things at the same time. So you love to see it. So
of course, don't forget to go to etbpodcast.com for all the blogging content that Zain and his crew are producing out day after day. And of course, the MMA Outsiders and the rest of the Empty the Bench Network is brought to you by Playback. All right.
Absolutely.
For Zain, I'm Tom. We will see you next week for episode 87 of the MMA Outsiders. Until then, take care all. Be Joe Piper. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Enjoy the fights and have a great rest of your week. Have a good one, guys. See you soon.